Welcome back to The Perspective. I'm with Kennedy Ashinze, founding editor-in-chief of Globetrotter and its creative director. Before the break, I asked Kennedy, can the magazine accommodate both a pure business person and a pure artist at the extreme ends of the spectrum in one magazine?
It absolutely can, and we gave this, that was a great question, by the way, but the idea, honestly, is to not just, we like to preach to the
masses?
Not necessarily to the masses. We don't like preaching to the converted per se.
Okay.
So obviously, you have your if it's a music publication or a design publication, we actually like to share. We want to open up these worlds to these different sectors, like you said, be it the business sector or the artist or photographer. We really want to spark conversation. We actually try not to underestimate, like you said, the business side or what they're thinking or what they're inspired by. At the end of the day, they go home, they have a pulse, they're human. I would imagine they would have an eye for good art, good music. You know, it's not all robotic. So we always try to carefully blur that line, but we always try to, we intentionally try to show that range. One minute we're talking about photos from Kathmandu, and the next page we're talking about an entrepreneur or a business person in some other city that's not related to those kind of imagery at all. But the idea is that we want to spark collaborations, we want to spark dialogue. We want you to actually see this world that you probably don't usually see when you're reading a business publication where it's all business. And there's nothing wrong with those publications, but for us, that's who we are, honestly. We love the arts. We also love to have series and celebrate great businesses. It really comes from the gut, and we actually feel like we're not alone in this. We feel like we've had a lot of cross conversations that have happened based on how these things are married together, and it's a work in progress, but we've had a lot of good feedback. We like like you said, we chop it up to art, design, film, music, and events, and we have some section called Movements where we celebrate some businesses. But there's still a thread that ties it all in for us, from the gut for us. So,
what makes a Globetrotter subject?
People who are just interesting, interesting, and that have depth. We love depth. Depth is basically could be, it doesn't, we love, an example could be fashion, but we actually love when conversations circle around, the fabric used, the history behind what you're doing, obviously, a bad example, well, we're gonna stay on fashion, but there's a lot of that going on, and we always like to sift through the noise a little bit and look for whatever individual it is. If it's a fashion person, if it's music, if there's depth there, we're excited. So it doesn't matter what region it's from, or what city or country, or how glamour it is, or even very subtle. Once there's depth there, it's exciting, and it's up to us to build this story and and tell it responsibly to the world where it gets some light.
And kind of off that, what makes a cover for your magazine?
That's a great question, because obviously covers sell publications, and we do this two-in-one thing. I see you have a copy there.
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, this is on the cover. On this particular issue, we have Jeff Staple, who, if people who are not this guy, Jeff Staple, great guy, amazing entrepreneur, and a fellow creative. And in the back here, we just took a shot from one of the spreads that was done. It's called the Highness Project. It was a collaborative project that was done by famed photographer Delphine Diallo and a couple of other people. It was a collaborative project. We just try to look for images that speak to the humankind. Like we like images. We don't necessarily, we're careful within this, with this covered thing, but we're not obsessed with smacking an image that's just going to sell public. I think we feel like we owe our readership a lot more. So we do the two-in-one thing because we have range in the topics we cover. So in the back could be a music cover, and the front can be whatever image that is obviously related to the issue, and we just feel it's strong enough to connect. And depending on how we're feeling, so that's the story behind that one.
This numero dos. Is this the second?
That's the second issue, and we have a third issue coming in the next couple of months.
Now, in Chicago and other places where the magazine, is it all issued in conjunction?
Actually, the same issue you see here is the same issue that is delivered worldwide.
So the same one you get on newsstands in Jakarta?
Absolutely. And again, it goes back to my point earlier, is that we want to share these stories. We want to share a Gojek story, for instance, like we had in the previous issue. We want people in Chicago to read that. We want people in London or Lagos to read these same stories, and vice versa. We want people here to read the stories, you know, in the other side of the pond as well. So, yeah, so we get to do that via distributors and all that.
What's next in terms of the cities that you're going to move to? I mean, are you, obviously you're just getting your feet set, year 1, 2 issues.
Yes.
Where do you want to go next?
Well, basically, we want to expand, obviously, as far as our distribution. In Southeast Asia, I think we're at a happy place, we're at a good place. But
Sorry, I've got to take it to break.
Sure, sure.
But we will go back to that.
Okay.
And we'll be back in just a minute on The Perspective.